Ladies and gentlemen, from a catacomb buried deep beneath the streets of the New World Order, this is the Remnant Underground. And now, here's your host, Michael J. Matt.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Remnant Underground. You know, whatever you think of Judge Brett Kavanaugh, whether you disapprove of his position on the Fourth Amendment or having had something to do with the Patriot Act, his involvement with the George W. Bush administration, whatever you think about him, put that aside for a moment and let's look at the aspect of all this that I think most of us in this audience can agree on. And that is this frantic attempt on the part of unhinged far-left liberals in this country to block Kavanaugh's nomination to the Supreme Court serves a really, really vital purpose. And that's this. It serves to reveal just how close to outright anarchy this country has moved in the last 10, 15 years. And think of the example for a moment that these characters in D.C., these vaunted leaders, think of the example that they are giving to the young men and women of this country, young Americans, the political leaders of tomorrow. I mean, obviously, if you don't agree with someone in America, in politics, you get to attack them, you get to lie about them, destroy them, vilify them, destroy the guy's family, destroy the whole political process, whatever it takes to take him down. And you already have these Soros-backed mobs of young people, not only on college campuses, but just wandering through the streets of the city, throwing bricks through windows and going crazy because they lost the election back in 2016. You already have that happening at the street level. And now you see it in politics, worse than it's ever been. And so what we've been saying down here in the Remnant Underground for years, that you take God out, you take the Christian moral law out, you take his authority out, you take the Catholic Church out of this equation, and look what we can expect. Look at the chaos and the anarchy that we can expect. I mean, the example that our political leaders are giving right now, this will give way to anarchy. It already is. But there's something even more important about what we're learning watching this theater of the absurd. And that is the most intriguing aspect, at least for me personally, the most intriguing aspect of all of this is the extent to which it exposes just how much politics in America, in this country, is now dominated by the issue of human sacrifice. I mean, you realize that's what's going on here, right? That's what this is all about. Human sacrifice. The lust for human blood of the innocent, with demands for more blood of the innocent aborted babies going on the left-hand side of the aisle and less blood on the right side of the aisle. But that's what they're all fighting about here. It's not the economy that matters anymore. Remember that the economy matters, stupid? Well, that's not it, right? The economy is through the roof. All they care about is sex and abortion. That's it. They're totally fixated on it. They are obsessed with sex. These guys are. They're out of control. And as I say, they're boldly admitting it now. Check out old Chuck Schumer.
The president's litmus test for picking an anti-choice judge should send shivers down the spine of every American who cares about women's reproductive freedom.
I don't care. I don't care if you're a big fan of Brett Kavanaugh's or not. You know that's a problem. That's a big problem. Because what we're seeing right now is coming right out of the bowels of hell. Moloch needs blood, and these people are going to go to the mat. They're going to commit political hara-kiri, if need be, to make sure that Moloch is not offended, that the blood of the innocent will still continue to flow in this country. And if you think, by the way, as many people do, many people are watching this, if you think that Brett Kavanaugh isn't, in fact, half the pro-life conservative that these people think he is, that only makes it worse. So in other words, he's not the great pro-life statesman, let's say. He's Brett Kavanaugh. That's kind of a mixed bag. And yet even still, Brett Kavanaugh presents a massive threat to these people. A massive threat. The potential for even the slightest restriction on our nation's human sacrifice mill, even the slightest restriction, elicits this kind of mass hysteria. We've got a problem, ladies and gentlemen. Because their case now against Brett Kavanaugh, their case is of course laughable, and everybody knows it's laughable. They're digging around in this guy's yearbook now, trying to find something, because his 30-year record as a judge is pretty darn impeccable. But they got nothing on him, and they know it. But he's still unfit for the U.S. Supreme Court. Why is that? Why is Brett Kavanaugh unfit? Schumer just mentioned it. They've been mentioning it on the Senate floor for all week long, and coming right out and admitting it. It's because of Roe v. Wade. It's because, like Trump, Brett Kavanaugh doesn't hate pro-life Americans quite enough. He certainly doesn't hate pro-life Americans like these characters do. And that's a problem. I mean, man, the demons are all over him now because of that. In fact, we have some footage of what these demons were doing to Kavanaugh just yesterday out behind the backside of the Russell Senate building in D.C. Check it out. Okay, you get the idea. I mean, it really is. It makes you wish that the word demonic had not been used so often, because in some sense that was sort of hyperbolic. Now it really is demonic what's going on, because they are calling for the blood of unborn babies, and anybody that even sort of threatens their agenda to take more blood is going to get crucified. And so they wheel out this poor accuser of Brett Kavanaugh, the illustrious Dr. Christine Blasey Ford. You know I'm supposed to sit up here and say, like everybody else, oh, something terrible happened to her. I just think she's mistaken about who it was. You know what? I can't do that. I can't look at this woman and say, yeah, she's credible. She's a credible witness. She's a victim. She's a survivor. It's impossible. I find her claim to be that she somehow still is traumatized by what some goofy kids did to her back in high school. I find this to be absurd. I mean, absurd. And this is where feminism has taken our country? And we've gone from Frieden and Steinem and Fonda to this thing? We're supposed to believe, by the way, that women are combat ready, right? Women are eminently qualified to fight alongside any man in a combat zone anywhere in the world, any hot spot in the world. Bring in the ladies, dress them up like G.I. Joe, and let's go for it, right? And yet, our nation right now is falling all over itself because some kids were mean to Dr. Ford back in 1982. They left her traumatized for life by acting like idiots.
I believed he was going to rape me.
How can you make the argument then that women are going to be ready for combat if they can't handle some goofball kid doing what this guy allegedly did, according to Dr. Ford, for almost 40 years ago? She still can't fly? She's still traumatized? She's freaking out? Really? I remember, for example, back when I was in high school 180 years ago, I was invited to a friend's house just like this, a friend's house party. His parents were gone, and we were so excited. We got to go to this house party, and we were setting off fireworks at night, late at night. We were being stupid. And all at once, someone said that there's a problem out in the driveway out in the front of the house. So I remember clearly walking out the door and to see what was going on, and I stepped out into the driveway, and there were both barrels of a 12-gauge shotgun jammed into my chest, and I was backed all the way down, like about 10 feet down into the garage door by a wild-eyed, long-haired, gun-wielding Vietnam vet neighbor whose delayed stress syndrome, we later found out, had been triggered by our fireworks. Now imagine what that was like. I grew up in hunting birds and using shotguns, and I knew what kind of damage a 12-gauge shotgun could do, especially at that range. It was lights out for me had he pulled those triggers. And I had to spend the next 10 minutes in the dark, out in the driveway, outside of my friend's house, trying to talk this madman out of shooting me. A very clear recollection. Was it terrifying? Was it traumatizing? You bet it was. The gun was loaded. The guy was bleary-eyed and screaming. I could feel those barrels in my chest. But you know what? The worst didn't happen. The worst didn't come to the worst that night. I guess I got a pretty good guardian angel, because the guy lowered his gun finally and he walked away, sort of asking us, hey, maybe, sorry guys, I freaked out, don't call the cops. It was fine. We didn't even call the police on the guy. Probably mostly because we didn't want the kids' parents to find out that there was a house party. But regardless, it was something you walked away from. And my point is that the relief that I can remember to this day, the relief that I felt that that man, that Vietnam vet, didn't actually go through with his plan to kill us, that was positively euphoric that night. We were fine. We laughed about it because it didn't happen. The bad thing didn't happen. Like in Ford's case, the bad thing didn't happen. And now we're supposed to get behind this woman who said it almost happened to her. And 35 years later, we need to stop this maniac pro-life judge from becoming a Supreme Court justice because she was traumatized.
I am here today not.
But of course, I'm just a man.
Be.
And so I don't really
terrified.
have any right to an opinion on
I
this.
am here because I believe it is my civic duty to tell you what happened to me while Brett Kavanaugh and I were in high school. I believed he was going to rape me.
We got something really special this week in the mail. It comes from Remnant guest columnist Beth Pierce, who's been with us for a while, whose byline our regular subscribers will certainly recognize. Now, Beth is an actual survivor of abuse and sexual assault, and she has a story to tell. And I hope that if you agree with me that this really is something, that this article pretty much says it all from an actual survivor, a victim of sexual and physical abuse, I hope you'll share this video or go over and grab the article, which we're going to post on remnantnewspaper.com. Grab that, share it with your friends, share it on social media, because this really, as far as I'm concerned, this is the answer. The future of our country, the future of our children, certainly, the future of our way of life, a political process, all of it, it depends to a large extent on whether or not our political processes will be corrupted, will be allowed to be corrupted like this by the anarchist tactics of pro-abort politicians. That's exactly what we're all facing right now. And the only way these fanatics can be stopped is for regular Americans, I hate to say it, but especially women, to stand up, speak out, and tell them enough's enough. And that's exactly what our columnist, Ms. Pierce, has done. Dear Mr. Matt, this is a hashtag #MeToo story. I don't think I ever wanted to write one of these because I don't particularly like the movement. I've dealt with my experience and I've moved on. But after the Kavanaugh-Blasey Ford hearing on September 27th, I suddenly felt obliged or obligated to tell my story. As an actual survivor of sexual and physical abuse, I decided to share only a few details of my past, now that victims of abuse like me are being exploited to suit a political agenda. This, I believe, needs to be called out. I'm a millennial. I was raised in an atheist and feminist household. My dad was absent, unless he wanted to hurt us. So we got a restraining order against him when I was 14 years old. I converted to Catholicism in my late teens. I've come from real abuse at his hands, both sexual and physical. And I live with a permanent physical disability, which he inflicted on me as a baby. I know something about abuse, in other words, and yet I don't have words to describe how sick and offended I felt while listening to Christine Blasey Ford use her alleged sexual abuse to try to derail the appointment of a pro-life judge. Why would she do this? She says she's a victim. Okay, but a victim of what? According to her own story, nothing actually happened. At least nothing that is remotely like real abuse. If her story is true, she was pushed onto a bed, the bedroom of which she had entered freely, and her attacker then grinded on her for a bit through several layers of clothing, and then went away, having gone no further. So what are we talking about here? Dr. Ford got scared that night. She got scared that something bad might happen, but then it didn't happen. If this is true, and I don't care if it is, then she is a victim of what? She says she's a survivor. Again, of what? Of being scared for a few moments? Perhaps Dr. Ford needs to be told what abuse really feels like, what fear really means. Because judging from her own testimony, she clearly has no idea. When I heard her testimony, I actually sat there waiting for the part where it got bad. It seemed that the whole country was Team Blasey Ford, so I figured her allegations must be pretty terrible. I waited, but it never got there. It never got bad. She quivered and she quaked over a little grinding and shushing, and worst of all, she said, some laughter. I could not believe what I was watching. There was no rape, no molestation, not even harassment, since minors messing around at an underage drinking party in the 1980s hardly rises to that level, and to suggest that it does only decriminalizes and diminishes the behavior of a pig like Harvey Weinstein, so let's not go there. And what was the boy in Ford's account really going to do with his friend right there in the room? Both boys went away laughing, she said, not taking it seriously. Rapists don't generally treat their object lightly. They attack when you're alone, in secret, and they're deadly serious. They dominate completely and subjugate with threats. They don't walk away. I know this. Ford's story is about a boy trying to have fun with a girl who wasn't up for it, and it ended without conquest. He's not a nice kid, whoever he was. He deserved to be slapped across the face. But a rapist? An attempted rapist? Only someone who's never been raped would suggest something so stupid that callously minimizes what actual rape victims have been through. So again, Dr. Ford is a victim of what? Of embarrassment? Some aggressive flirtation? 5 minutes maybe of fleeting fear that something was going to happen which never materialized into anything more than that? This is a nothing burger, even if you feel like believing Dr. Ford's story, which you don't have to, because no one besides Ford can confirm that her aggressor was indeed Brett Kavanaugh, the pro-life Supreme Court Justice nominee whose personal life was evidently so uneventful that his attackers now have to go back all the way to high school to try to dig up enough alleged misdemeanors on the man to make him seem unfit to serve. So what's this really all about? Most women who grew up in the promiscuous 1980s can tell similar stories, and yet they don't pretend to have suffered lasting trauma from it. Where is this woman's case? Why did this high school blip of a story make it all the way to the Supreme Court? Have we lost our minds completely in this country? If this woman couldn't handle an aggressive come-on from an Anthony Michael Hall character wannabe, how did she handle the culture in which she then grew up? The culture in which the sex fiend Madonna, for example, was queen of the dunghill. Her story is lifted straight out of a dozen coming-of-age movies from the 1980s. Only this one wouldn't have scored the R rating of a Fast Times at Ridgemont High, for example. Dr. Ford's story is an example of a rather pathetic symptom of the degenerating culture at the time that had come directly out of the sexual revolution of the 1960s and 70s. So this woman who claims now to be a feminist, who has a job, a husband, children, who vacations in Tahiti, she's the victim of what? How dare she pretend to represent those who have been raped, beaten, cowed, oppressed, made to feel that they were utterly helpless, unlovable, unwantable, damaged. Blasey Ford, who was hit on at 15, is a survivor? Please. She's a feminist of the new variety, the privileged white liberal feminist of first world countries who need victim status to feel relevant. They watch The View and they shed great big tears over Oprah Winfrey segments, but apparently can't do whatever a man can do, only better. Not at all. They're not Rosie the Riveter. They're not Hanoi Jane. They're not fierce. Rather than competing with men, they can only tattle on men as part of their decades-long hissy fit that seeks to terminate anything they can't handle. From babies to men's rights and now to conservative Supreme Court justices. These are female supremacists and sexists in the extreme. A bunch of whining teenage little girls, crying babies. Here's your I Am Woman of 2018. Watch me roar? Not quite. But watch me whimper, whine, and vocal fry for the TV cameras. That I can do. Blasey Ford is a feminist only because privileged white liberal women need a cause. And in order to have that cause these days, they'd better establish themselves as a victim. Even if you're only the victim of some snot-nosed kid who spooked you back in high school. And now this woman, this supposed feminist, is going to use her victimhood to destroy the reputation of a good man. And our country, America, to its everlasting shame, is going to jump on the bandwagon. We're going to allow this to happen. Real victims should be outraged by this blatant exploitation. If Dr. Ford gets to say #MeToo, then the whole Me Too movement has no credibility. Every girl who ever got an unwanted catcall gets to call herself a victim now, and I refuse to stand with such crap. And while Ford is a pretty questionable victim at this point, Brett Kavanaugh is emerging as a real victim, more so every day. I have no special love for this man, but it's pretty clear to everyone who hasn't burned a bra that he's the victim of white, privileged, liberal feminists, positively panic-stricken that they might lose their right to kill their babies someday. Judge Kavanaugh, his wife, his 2 daughters, they must be destroyed because someday, somehow, this man might just approve legislation that would force women to assume responsibility for their own sexual activity again, and we can't have that. So we need to take this man down, even if that means making a mockery of real sex abuse victims by rending our hoodies over an attempted makeout session between 2 minors almost 40 years ago. What's this really about? The Democrats on the Senate Judiciary Committee have admitted it over and over again. The problem here is the judge is pro-life. He represents a perceived threat to the momentum of the anti-life establishment. Plus, this is one more way to extend the middle finger to President Trump while feeling oh so righteous in the process. We are standing with victims. Look at us stand. This is the melodramatic message. As one brave feminist scrawled on her little picket sign, "Roe yes, Kavanaugh nope." Well said, sweetheart, but ever wonder why you care so much? And of course the media are playing these feminists too. Since in matters of women's health, read birth control and abortion, there is no more militant fan base than the activists posing as journalists over at MSNBC and CNN. The media have sicked their chosen agents on a pro-life husband and father, and these agents are gallantly standing in solidarity now with a woman who says she was seriously traumatized by some dorky kid back in the 1980s. The media get to weep when she weeps and turn her drama into their own and post pictures of themselves on social media holding cards with self-righteous phrases such as, "I need feminism because patriarchy took away my voice." But no one thinks it's strange that on one woman's word alone, a man gets ruined. If Dr. Ford really was traumatized that night, that's unfortunate. But she lives in the United States of the privileged liberals in 2018, and women like her are not really oppressed. Some people suck. Sometimes bad things happen, but grow a backbone, Blasey, and get over it. If this precious wuss is what the mighty feminist movement has produced, then clearly feminism has set women back centuries. These radical feminists only have a cause at all because they've moved the goalposts. It's not about liberation or equality. It's not about fair treatment and just wages and strong, independent women. No, it's just full-fledged assault on masculinity, where women can compete only by eliminating the competition, which means expanding their own rights beyond all reasonable proportions and terminating men's completely. Now we are equal. And of course, safeguarding the right to have sex however they want it, and then to murder the consequences. This is the essence of feminism in 2018. Yeah, don't forget, it's all about abortion. My father wanted me aborted because I was an unplanned pregnancy. My parents were young and unwed and not Catholic, so my mom could have so easily been persuaded. But she didn't go through with it. I don't think I need to mention how grateful I am. I'm here today because of a strong woman, a mother, a single mom, a survivor. As a victim of abuse, it would be a cold day in hell before I'd side with Dr. Ford. In fact, between the two of them, Kavanaugh and Ford, I'll stick with the pro-life judge. I think maybe he's got my back a little more than the volatile and unhinged feminists do, or than their willing accomplices in the media do, which would use my story and that of so many other victims to promote their own political agendas without asking any of us what's actually best for us or what we still need. Because it's not about us. Not really. It's about them. So if Me Too gives me a voice, then here's what I'd like to say. I don't hate men. I hate BS. I hate manipulation and exploitation. I don't need to get even with anybody. The man who hurt me is a pathetic loser, but I've moved on with my life, grateful for the many good men who've stood by me and my family when my own father wasn't there. I don't want to be angry. I don't want to stay broken. I want to live in a country where moral standards are respected, standards which exist in the first place to protect innocence and decency, and where the victims of the worst abuse of all, abortion, are given a chance to live as I was. I want to live in the security and freedom which come with a God-centered society, and one which regards life as the greatest prize, and every soul as equal in the eyes of God. This would be justice for victims, finally. But vindictiveness, polarization, rage, protests, that's for manipulative men and weak women who allow themselves to be oppressed by their own propped-up victimhood. No thank you. It's time to move on, ladies. As an actual victim of sex abuse, I stand with Judge Kavanaugh, and I refuse to be represented by Dr. Blasey Ford or any of the other angry activists or pro-abort politicians might trot out to make fools of us all. Thank you for hearing my story.